sometime in 2020 was the Beirut bombing. And around that time, I realized that this was about the leavening. And there's some interpretations of the leavening that are different. But leavening means to rise. It also means lavare, which is to lose the flesh. And what does it mean to lose the flesh? Like, we are in a carnival. Carnivale. Carnival comes from carnivore, meat, flesh. So carnivale is to lose the flesh. It's also the circus, the big top, which is living under the stars, the canopy, the dome, the vault. And so to lose the flesh, you have to go through the alchemical marriage. The alchemical marriage is the marriage of the opposites, uniting the opposites within you. The masculine and feminine, but also the polarities within you, in order to become whole. And to go through the alchemical process so that you can rise. Well, what are you rising into? You're rising into Christ consciousness. But you're also rising, rise and shine. You're rising into your, what some people call light body, which is why I talk a lot about the Anunnaki. They're the shining ones. But also I talk about, in various events, the words to shine come up a lot. Because that's our goal. Our goal is to shine, rise and shine. And in some cases, leavening is referred to as, don't get a rise out of you. Like, don't get disturbed by what happens in the 3D. I don't see it that way. I kind of see it the opposite. I see that the leavening is about rising Christ consciousness within you. You transform into light. Your body will fill with light. So let your eye be single and your body will fill with light. And that happens through meditation. So you want to calm the mind, silence the thoughts. Don't let the thoughts hold power over you. Leave the 3D behind, which is what the leavening is about. Losing the flesh. So what does it mean to lose the flesh? Well, it just simply means to leave the 3D behind. To not be attached to the physical. And there are various stages in that. Initially, the leaving the 3D behind would be to be detached from physical things, like to not care about it. You might think that, oh, well, if something breaks, it doesn't matter. You just replace it. It's no big deal. If somebody comes into your life, you let them come and go. You don't worry about it. If, you're just sort of emotionally detached from whatever happens outside of you. That's one way of looking at it, which I am not an advocate for. And the reason I'm not an advocate for it is because when I went through that phase, because I had an attitude of that the physical didn't matter, things started to be taken from me. And that created more suffering. And that is not the way to go. We have to get to a place where we appreciate and value the 3D. We value it. We understand that it is a projection from what is within. We understand that it's as within, so without, as above, so below. So everything we see outside of us is an extension of us. Therefore, you should love it as you love yourself. Love thy neighbor. The idea that we shouldn't be attached to the physical in a sense that we depend upon it, that we see it in a 3D perspective, that our value comes from the external. The value should come from within, and then the external manifests. But it isn't a one-way, one-directional experience. it's a circular experience. It's not just as within, so without. It's as without, so within. It's both. It's what came first, the chicken or the egg? They came simultaneously. So to look at something as being a cause and effect, there is no cause and effect. It happens simultaneously. We perceive a cause and effect, but it happens simultaneously. When you create a problem, the answer is already created. The answer is created in the creation of the problem. You're just looking at the problem rather than looking at the solution. That's why you think the answer comes after the problem. But there are times where you can instantly get a solution to something without having a problem. You just don't notice the problem. So everything is created simultaneously, as within, so without. And you should value the experience that you have in the 3D as much as you value what happens within. When you value within, your external changes. So your value doesn't come from outside. You lose attachment to the 3D as being where you get your value in terms of how much money you have, how you look, how much stuff you accumulate. It's valuable, certainly. But if you lost it tomorrow, it wouldn't change who you are. You can gain it right back. So if you lose something in the physical, say you have a relationship with somebody and they leave you, is there something wrong with being upset about that? No. But in some spiritual circles, they will say that that's not what you're supposed to do. You should be detached from the physical. It shouldn't affect you. Well, in one sense, that's accurate, but not in the sense that it doesn't matter what happens outside of you, that the physical things can just come and go and you shouldn't be affected by it, that people can die in your experience and it doesn't matter, someone can divorce you or leave you and it shouldn't matter, you lose pets, you lose belongings, you go homeless and it doesn't matter. No, you're still living in the 3D. You still need things. You still have to survive. You still have to have somewhere to sleep, some clothes on your back. You want to feel good about yourself. So you need to maintain a healthy body. You need to maintain an active lifestyle. You need to have physical things around you in order to survive, in order to live a comfortable life. So what does it actually mean then if something leaves you? Then don't pay any mind to the fact. If you want them to leave you, then, mission accomplished. But if you don't want them to leave you and it upsets you, there's no reason for it to upset you because you can just manifest it right back. That's the difference. It isn't a matter of it doesn't upset me because the physical has no value. No, it doesn't upset you because it's not real. And I can be and have whatever I want. I want that person to come back. I'm going to manifest that person to come back. Therefore, it shouldn't upset you because it's merely a condition and it's a temporary condition and you can change it. The losing of the flesh is going from 3D and being attached to the 3D and getting your value from the 3D to what some people call 5D, if you want to call it that. Christ consciousness, where you are all things and you can manifest whatever you want. The camel passing through the eye of the needle and the rich man not being able to. That has to do with leaving the flesh behind because the rich man won't let go of his stuff because this is like letting go of yesterday, shedding your memories, shedding your attachments, shedding what you cling to as your identity of who you think you are, the things you've invested time in and accumulated. You you're attached to all of that and say, well, I'm not going to let go of, say this sofa because it took me 20 years to save up for this sofa. So you're not just thinking of the sofa, but you're thinking about the money that it cost you and the time and the labor that it took you to raise the money over 20 years to save for this sofa. So you've put more value in that than what you can get on the other side in the kingdom of God, right? So a rich man will never pass into the kingdom of God because he refuses to let go of his attachment to the physical. So you have to let go of your attachments to what you think you are, what you've put value in terms of, well, I've worked hard for this life. I've worked hard for this. I earned this. I deserve that. All of these mental attachments to who you perceive yourself to be, what you perceive your story to be. The bigger thing is what you perceive your story to be. Because we look back in our lifetime and we tell a story of how we got to where we are today. Whether it's career, any angle of your life whatsoever. And chances are you tell the story the same way. Because usually we don't rewrite the story. We have a certain perspective on our life and how it happened and things that we determine that are factual and historical and accurate. And this is how it happened. And so every time somebody asks you about your life, you tell the same story. Well, what if that wasn't your story? What if that wasn't your life? It was just your perception of your story. Because that's all it is. It's just a perception. So the point is that you have to lose your perception of what you think your story was. And you have to be willing to let that go. Because it's not just the physical things. It's your story that creates the physical things. And so you're hanging on to the story that created the physical things as much as you are the physical things themselves. So the story of the rich man, he also refused to let go of his story. He wasn't just saying, well, I have all this stuff. You want me to leave it behind? No. He had a story. He had baggage. He had a story that he was clinging to just as much as clinging to his stuff. And Jesus was like, well, see ya. Can't come with me then. You gotta go. And he's like, but I've done all this work, Jesus. Jesus doesn't give a shit. This is another thing that bothers me. It's like everybody in Christianity thinks Jesus was this like holy person who never did anything wrong. Would never harm any hair on anybody's head. But there's some stuff in the Bible where Jesus is kind of a dick. And rightfully so, because people are like, well, Jesus, help me. And he's like, I never knew you. It's like, he's not going to reach down and cast his pearls before swine. He's not going to waste his time for people who don't get it. And so, yeah, like the rich man is like, well, Jesus, I did all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. If you're not willing to let go of the 3D, I can't help you. It's kind of amusing to me, but so what happens when you let it go? All right, so if you haven't seen the Tiffany Gomez stuff, what are you waiting for? Because the Tiffany Gomez stuff is really revealing. It talks about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. It talks about the two planes. It talks about how the worlds are colliding and they're merging. And it talks about like how she unified the two aspects of herself. In return, she had the option to leave through the green exit. She chose to come back, and she's now top of the world. She's top of the world because she has mastered her domain. She left the airport with no luggage. She had no attachments to the physical. So she had a choice. She chose to come back. She had the option to go out the green exit. She chose to come back. She wants now to come back and provoke the masculine, which is why she's doing the tour in the masculine circles. So yeah, if in terms of the leavening, you have to merge the opposites, as Tiffany Gomez did. You have to go through the alchemical marriage within. You have to let go of the physical and have no baggage when you choose to leave. Even though she decided to come back, she's on top of the world. She knows who she is, and she is queen of her domain. So when you come back, but you have to exit out fully. You have to know who you are. You have to leave the physical behind. You have to have gone through the alchemical process in order to ascend. This is why her company is called Elevate, because she's elevating, rise and shine. When you come back, you are the ruler. TMFINR. Time ends for reality, 3D. She's a messenger, basically. She's conveying a message to you about how to exit the system. So when you enter into the kingdom of heaven, you rule. You rule your own world. You are in charge. You decide what is. But also, as I said before, here's your ultimate dream life and all the variations of it. All the variations of it disappear because that's the world of suffering and the 3D of the sine wave. And then you return to the kingdom of heaven, which is your dream world where everybody's awake and remembers who they are. So does it look like this? Does it look like the physical? Yeah, I think it does. So you're just in a different state of consciousness where you realize what this world is and how it's made and how it functions. But now you decide. But the more aware you become of how intangible, non-physical this world is, again, it's all just perception. So you become aware of all the possibilities. You become aware of all the ways in which you can live your life. So now you can have it all. But you can only have it all if you leave behind everything that you think you earned or you're attached to in the past, in the physical. It's kind of a paradox. As with everything in this place, everything's a paradox. So leaving behind who you thought you were, leaving behind the things you accumulated, the story you tell yourself about who you are, about your life, about what your life story is, because all of that is not true. So in spiritual circles, they talk a lot about like letting go of the ego and all of this sort of thing, which is helpful to a point. But this is different. This is more to do with how you perceive your life to be, your life story to be, and realizing that there's infinite ways to tell that story, even that existing story. And you want to find a different way to tell it so you free yourself from it. And you're able to access the world where you are awake, everybody around you is awake, and you all remember who you really are, and you leave this other world behind. So that's how I see it at present anyway.